Hi students, this is Unit 1, Lesson 3, Approaches in Psychology. So we have defined psychology as the scientific study of observable behavior and mental processes. In this lesson, we will look more at the scientific approaches to observable behavior and mental processes. We will do that by considering the big debate in psychology. Now, the big debate centers on the nature versus nurture argument and how we have come to know our behaviors. Do we behave because of nature, those things that we are born with, or because of nurture, those things that we have observed through our families, through socialization? So nature is what you're born with. Nurture is your environment, that which you grow up in. Here's a little bit more on that subject.
We're born with a set of genes that never changes. And for generations, there has been debate over nature versus nurture, and whether genes or environment influence behavior more. What does determine our destiny? Is it in the genes? When we are conceived, two sets of genes are joined into one. From that moment, DNA determines certain characteristics. The color of our eyes, the texture of our hair, our gender are set. But science has only begun to explore the role genes play in human behavior.
Genes may very well determine how we behave in given situations.
UCLA immunologist Bill Clark says genes help control how we interpret our environment.
You're dealt a particular hand of neurotransmitters and neurotransmitter receptors, and again, together with other things, of course, in your biology and in your history, it's going to play out differently in different people.
There has to be some kind of innate circuitry in place that allows us to create culture and acquire culture and do the learning.
But they do not operate without some input.
What you choose to learn, how hard you try to learn, and what you do with what you learn, you do have some responsibility.
The ability to modify our behavior is what allows us to overcome genetic predisposition.
Different genes are turned on and off in different circumstances.
Those circumstances, though, may be very subtle.
We actually could fool people by pretending we were each other.
Consider identical twins born with the same DNA.
Same height, same weight, our whole lives.
Though raised alike, Nancy and Jana are quick to point out they're individuals.
Nancy was always very free-spirited, and I was the one that was a little bit more responsible.
You to push?
No.
And how much does our upbringing matter?
Proper brain growth depends on lots of nurturing interactions in the early years of life.
Parents aren't the only aspect of the environment. There's also the surrounding culture.
Some believe the strongest social influences exist outside the home. Controversial author Judith Rich Harris says we get our genes from our parents, but are guided by our peers.
The children of immigrants don't resemble their parents in the language they speak and even in their culture. They resemble the people they grew up with.
A recent study backs this up. It found the greatest influence on whether teens drink or smoke is whether their friends do.
As long as you're within the normal range of parenting, how your child turns out is not up to you, it's up to the child.
Child psychiatrist Stanley Greenspan says this attitude can create irresponsible parenting.
Let's see you dance.
He says genes and environment are like a dance, working together to make us who we are.
That's it. Good.
And maybe the environment sets the constraints just as much as the genes do.
If you throw Einstein in a closet when he's a baby because he has some insane parent, he's not going to be smart. He's going to wind up like one of these tragic kids who gets found in a closet.
So whether it's parents, peers, or genetic predisposition, it seems our destiny is determined by a blend of factors.
Nature is a lock, and nurture has to provide the key for that lock.
Scientists continue to study the nature of DNA and how it reacts to environment. As they do, they gain better understanding of the diseases and behaviors that affect our lives.
It's the nature versus nurture argument that we'll continue to debate and study throughout our course. Consider nature versus nurture. We have to look at biology. After all, that is the nature side. And I've heard it said that nurture builds upon what nature endows. So if we are given the biology of superior genes towards intelligence, maybe, it's up to nurture to foster those genes. Look at behavior. One approach at looking at behavior is the biological approach, and that is considering behavior and mental processes are largely shaped by the nervous system, which consists of our brain, hormones, and genes. This introduces the theory of evolution, where some traits are passed through generations because it is essential for survival. So behavior and mental processes are adaptive traits for survival. We had Sigmund Freud in our last lesson. His theory evolved into psychodynamic theory, and this posits that behavior comes from unconscious drives stemming from our childhood. So Freud might ask the question, tell me about your mother. The behavioral approach was fathered by John Watson, and Watson emphasized learning, especially each person's experiences with rewards and punishments, is what shapes our behavior. Remember that behaviorists focused largely on observable behavior. They eliminated the mental side of things and believed that they could control behavior through rewards and punishments, through conditioning. The cognitive approach of observable behavior and mental processes emphasizes the ways in which we receive, store, retrieve, and process information. So largely learning, how do we learn? Stresses how we see the world and how we react to happy and sad events. So that is about perceptions, how we perceive the environment. The humanists emphasize the individual potential for growth and stress, individual choice, and free will. These theorists' approaches would say that people and their choices center around getting needs met and then striving to grow. Like, I want to live my best life. How am I going to do that? Well, I have to get basic needs met before I can worry about meditating. Another approach is the social cultural approach. Kind of touched on this, which focuses on how culture influences the way we think and act. So how does gender, race, and age influence our behavior? All right, we're going to play a game related to the psychological approaches, and we'll save this one for class. But in the meantime, when you come to class, know about these approaches: the biological, psychoanalytic, or psychodynamic, sociocultural, cognitive, humanist, and behavioral approaches to studying psychology.